Shalom again, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com, bringing to you today's daily lesson in the Sefer Yetzirah. Today is lesson number 78, dedicated, of course, to the safety, health, well-being, blessing, prosperity, and protection of everybody around the world facing all kinds of strange and trials and tribulations that are going on. First there was a virus, now social demonstrations, all kinds of stuff going on. Remember, you have a power within you. If you pay attention to what I'm sharing with you in these lessons and you put it into proper practice, then you will discover, you will experience the power of which we speak here at our KosherTorah School. I can't tell you this enough. It is beyond words. You need to put this into practice. Now, with that being said, we're going to begin now chapter 5. Boy, time flies when we're having fun. I'm going to introduce you now to the 12 elementals and to a very precise and a unique set of correlations, which we call in psychology archetypes. Okay? Archetypes are pictorial imagery that have a collective impression upon the psyche, so that whenever an individual sees some form or essence of a figure, it means something precise and specific, generally, and of course also with equal specific application within a context and culture. Now, with that being said, before we go into the images, we're going to go into energies, for lack of a better word. So, our 5th chapter opens up and begins with this version of our Mishnah. 12 pshutot, 12 simple. The word pashut means simple. Some will refer to it as pure, but the word really means simple, pashut. It is the same as the Hebrew word tamim, which means, again, simple or pure. In other words, this is just what they are. The 12 simples, as we will learn, I'll read it to you. They are the letters Hey and Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod, Lamed, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Sadi, Kof. And I have a handout, which I'll show you in a minute, and those things will be on it. Now, just before I read to you about these things, little digression. Well, it's not really a digression. It's actually an important point. What are these letters? They're called diagonals. The Hebrew word is alechsonim. What is a diagonal? Well, if you remember, we have already discussed our horizontal 3 mothers, our vertical 7, which are the columns, which go up and down the Hayim, right, left, center. Remember the Hadar? Okay. These are diagonals, right? They're going crossways, up and down and all around. There are 12 of them. And yes, of course, the number 12 is going to correspond, what do you know, to the 12 months of the year, to the 12 signs of the zodiac, and of course, as we shall see, to the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 parts of the body, all right, the 12 attributes, 12 names of God, all this kinds of stuff. As we will proceed through the classes, you'll see this. But okay, let's just start right here at the beginning. A diagonal. When we make practical ascent, and remember what ascent is. Stop thinking in religious terms. Stop thinking in mythology. People read books like Enoch, whether it's first Enoch or third Enoch, the writings of Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva, and we read what we call these midrashim, these stories, and we're under the impression, I wish I could ascend to the heavens and talk to the malachim and all that. Well, remember, all of this is done, with the exception of Moses himself, astrally. Moses, he was actually taken up off planet. That's why he was, on Mount Sinai for 40 days, 40 nights, didn't have to eat, didn't have to drink, right? Didn't have to take his little bags with him. But everyone else makes these trips astrally. So you're going to sit here in your meditation, you're going to sit and you're going to do your meditations on the letters, just like blah, 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 blah. And you're going to go nodding off. And all of a sudden, you're going to have dreams and visions. And you go, wow. You're going to wake up with a snap. You're going to have this mind full of impressions. Bingo! You made your trip. And the more that you refine that, clarify it, the greater and higher the trip is. No, we don't use drugs. That only perverts the trip, skewers it. In other words, it's going to send you in a direction you don't want to go. But when we practice this and we make the ascents, actually the ascent is called a descent, right? The going up is actually called going in or going down because you're going down into the depth of the unconscious. That, believe it or not, is the reality of this path. Because as we think we're going up the columns in strict rigidity, no, you're not. Sometimes you're on this side. Sometimes you're on that side. Sometimes you're in the middle. Sometimes you sway off to the right. Sometimes you sway off to the left. Sometimes you go quick to the right, quick to the left, into the center. There is movement. Just like we learned way back when we said about the Hayot, the angels, Ratzu Weshov. They go back and forth. This is the secret of the diagonals. The diagonals are the application of the reality of the path. Because, I don't know, unless you're not human. I mean, in all due respect, I'm just a regular, everyday, human being, born and raised on Long Island, and the like. My point in saying this is that we're all normal. We all have ups and downs, ins and outs, highs and lows. That's just the way life is. And that movement in consciousness is the experience of the diagonals, where in which when you think you're going up, maybe you veer off to a side, or you can go down, or you can go up, and you're moving back and forth in the vibrant movement of the path. So the diagonals, if you will, are the reality of the very simple realities of life. Now, true, along those diagonals, you can go one way or the other, but we don't call them doubles like we did the columns going up and down, because ultimately the diagonals will take us to the columns, which go and bring us up and from which we come down. But the path going up and down is never always a straight line. That's just the reality of it. So when we are traveling the actual realistic paths of our human expressions, we represent them through meditative techniques. Now, here are the correlations for our worksheet. This is from my larger Sefer Yetzirah course. This part here is. And you'll see that there are correlations here, some of which I'm not really going to cover in this class. I'll probably dabble in it because I put it in here. But as you will see, there are all kinds of correlations. And the one correlation that Rabbi Hayim Vital makes when he, let me take a step back and read the book before I read Rabbi Hayim Vital. So the book says that these 12 diagonals, these elementals, are the foundations of 12 elements or attributes of, now I'm going to put it correctly, human personality. Personality is our personal, individual expressions of how every individual goes about and does things. These 12 are called speech, thought, movement, sight, sound, action, sex, smell, sleep, anger, eating, and laughter. Now, those are the 12. And again, on the worksheet, you'll see them, because the one thing that Reb Hayim, in his little commentary there, and I have it right here, you can see right there, he corresponds these to something that the Sefer, the book itself, does not. And that are the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's going to take us smack into what we called the archetypes. So this is how Reb Hayim correlates these. Speech, he corresponds to the tribe of Judah. Thought, to the tribe of Issachar. Movement, Zebulun. Sight, Reuven. Hearing, Shimon. Action, God. Sex, Ephraim. Smell, Menashe. Sleep, Benjamin. Anger, Dan. Eating, Asher. Laughter, Naphtali. So, here we have the 12 patriarchs, the 12 tribes of Israel, and these 12 attributes. And you're going to sit and scratch your head and say, okay, what the heck? What does all that mean? Well, to the best of my knowledge, I think everybody, we all interact with speech, thought, movement, sight, sound, action, sex, most of us, smell, sleep, anger, eating, laughter. Isn't that kind of like the human experience? Every one of us experiences all of these things. At some times, we are more inclined towards one expression than another. You'll notice rogus, anger, is included in here. You will find many of the moralist rabbis saying, anger is bad, anger is wrong. If you ever get angry, it's like committing idol worship and you are idolatry and blah, blah, blah. You know what? I'm more of the persuasion, the point of view of the words of the emperor from Star Wars, who said, your anger makes you strong. All right? Actually, he said hate, but I'll throw in anger. Why? I believe anger is a focus of energy that has its place in the greater scheme of things. We never act with anger in a way that is harmful towards ourselves or others. But anger in and of itself has its place, as we see here. It is one of the paths, the diagonal paths to God. You hear that? Yes, you can actually get to God through speech. There are speaking types of meditations, thought, introspective meditations, movement meditations, certainly sight and sound meditations, actions, very big in Judaism, rituals, commandments, sex, there's elements and issues of sex as well, which are related to Kiddushan, holiness to God, or the opposite, it's taken the opposite direction, as we all know. Smell, very big, the incense offerings in the temple. Sleep, do you realize you actually serve God when you sleep? Yeah, you do. Not only does the physical body need it, but your mind needs it. A, to rebuild the physical body, and B, for your mind to disconnect from this dimension and reconnect to its home. So you even serve God when you sleep. Anger, we already covered that. Eating, laughter. All of these are archetypes. Methods, ways, means of personality, which each of us experiences all the time. But in meditative technique, in ascent, there are those times when we are more, if you will, aligned with this or that attribute. There are times when you can be, let's be very graphic, when you're in a properly married relationship, then the act of sexual intimacy between spouses, as defined by Torah law, can and indeed is supposed to become an act of the worship of God, bonding with the divine presence, the Shekhinah. Now, we can anthropomorphize that and say the woman, the wife, becomes the Shekhinah, but it's more than that. Each human being becomes a vessel, a vehicle. This is why, for example, sex is such a vital, important thing, and why promiscuity is always, across the board, a bad, energetic move. Because this is such a potent power of divine expression that it can become an equally potent power of negative and harm, as we see in our world today. But then again, look at all these attributes. They also, speech, all right? Go look at social media today, whether it's the written word or the spoken word, it's all the same. Look at all the nasty things that go on out there. Thought, look at all the perversions and twisting of thoughts. So how do we get right with all these things? How do we protect ourselves? The diagonals normally express to us how we can go from one path to the next and back and forth. And this is the nature of our personality. So as you see yourself in your personality, at the moment, today, as opposed to tomorrow or yesterday, being inclined towards this or that element, then what we do is embrace the sefirotic path, which corresponds to the origins of that expression, The expression itself is what we call the archetype. We could, like we did with the patriarchs, the 7 shepherds, use the 12 patriarchs here, the 12 tribe leaders, as archetypes for BeGeD-style guides, to guide us, to help us understand the attribute. If you're angry, okay, you meditate upon the anger. You go deep into the anger. If you need to, you channel it in any which way, through the letter, through the sounds, at the proper time, in the proper way. And then you can get to the penetration, to the depth of what it really means and why it's there and what it means to you. That's what this is all about. Remember, even though this is really the secrets of what we call the school of Maaseh Bereshit, because we're going to apply these teachings into the application of changing the external world, nevertheless, before we do that, we have to make the ascent above, so as to bring down that energy so we can have the energy, the Hiyuli, the prima matter, to form everything in this world from bad to good, or from worse to better. Now, in order to do that, this ascent process was what we call the Ma'aseh Merkabah. But it's very clearly described in the Gemara, Talmud, Tractate Hagigah, that this is a path that can only be taught one-on-one, and then only to a student who fully understands, or can understand. And then the teacher has to give what's called the Reshe Prakim, the chapter headings, as opposed to the details. I discussed this with you in a previous class. This is why I will, as I say, give you some, but hold back more, because you are the one who has to be able to discover this. You have to walk this path yourself as an individual. That's why way back when, in the first class, we taught the meaning of the word netiv. That's why these are called the 32 wondrous paths, netivot. It's an individual path that only you can walk by yourself. And as you walk this path by yourself, and you experience your own emotional expressions, your own personality dispositions, are you more inclined to learning visually, or are you more inclined to learning audio? Are you more inclined to the sense of smell, or maybe the sense of touch? Are you a very sexual person or not a sexual person? Do you tend to get angry, or do you tend to laugh? All of these are different expressions represented as archetypes along the diagonal paths of these 12. And we correspond them to the individual letters. And each of the letters of God's name, Yud K, Vav K, are from these elementals. They're from diagonals. Why? Because our humanity is not in the extremes of the columns of the right, left, center. Those exist in reality. But our walk is always back and forth and forth and back. That's the secret of the diagonals here in the Sefer Yetzirah. And I'll tell you, for those of you who are familiar with the Oriental symbol of the yin-yang, it's also the reason, you know the yin-yang, it's the big circle, half of it's white, half of it's black. But you'll notice that the half, it doesn't just go split in half along a diameter. It like curves in the shape of like a tear, all right? And then it has a little dot of the opposite color. One is white, one is black, one is black, one is white. So it's that movement. And anyone in the martial arts knows where you're going from side to side, moving back and forth. That's what these diagonals are. Don't look at them as just lines in a geometric pattern that you write and you memorize. No, it is expression of the fluidity of the continual change of our human behaviors, our human predilections, our human direction. And as we make the path of ascent, we are always subject to the environment, circumstances. As we say, SHI blank, blank, blank happens all the time. How you deal with it will define your ascent or descent. And yeah, heaven, God, spiritual, whatever, allows all that stuff to happen to teach us, if you will, how to dance. So if there's an obstacle along your way in the path, what do? Well, you can sit there and not move, or if you see it rolling your way, you can jump over it, step over it, go around it, tumble-salt over it. There are many different ways to avoiding an obstacle. What's the right way for you? Only you will know. Let's pick this up in our next class and go more into this stuff. Ariel Tzadok from the KosherTorah School, KosherTorah.com. Check out our meditation courses. Learn and see for yourselves. Remember, experience is power. I'll see you soon. Shalom.